So you're an assistant strength and conditioning coach and the head nutritionist?
Yeah. I mean, on the nutrition side, it's just me. And then we've got a really amazing in-house food service staff that they do an amazing job with taking care of all the meals, individualizing as much as we need to for the players.
Yeah.
And, we kind of rest our hat on trying to be one of the best in the NFL, if not all professional sports, in terms of just the taste and quality. It's one thing we've heard a lot about from players that have been around the league, that have been to multiple teams. One of the big things that they like and recognize is like the food is just so much better with us than it is anywhere else. And like, that's just our food service staff and our head chef. They're very talented, and we're lucky to have them.
Oh, that's awesome. What is the driving force behind that? Because it sounds like it's different depending on what team you're at, right? So there's a food service team. How many meals are the guys eating on premise, like during the season?
Yeah, during off-season training, during a normal off-season training, when they're with us, and then at camp and in season, it's generally breakfast and lunch, and then we'll individually package things for specific players that want to take food home to go. Now, a lot of them, they've got families where they have their own chef, or they just don't want to eat, the same thing that they had seen for lunch. And I get it, I understand. They don't want to take advantage of it. Usually, our rookie free agents are very financially savvy players, know that, hey, it's a free meal. It's exactly what I need, and it tastes good. Why would I not take this home and eat it? Absolutely. During camp, we'll do breakfast, lunch, dinner, and then everybody calls it the quote unquote late night snack. That's fourth meal, really. On top of just all the nutrition items, bars, fruit, nut packets, specifically tailored options that our food service staff has either created or we purchase from third-party vendor that we have spread out around the building, whether it's outside meeting rooms, whether it's in the weight room, whether it's in the locker room. We try to take care of as much as we can, because the guys are so laser focused on training and meetings and their phone. We try to take the guesswork out of it while simultaneously educating them on what exactly they should be eating based on a lot of different factors.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And I guess my next question is, like, to what extent are you guys tailoring meals for individual players?
As much as they want. Right now we've got a roster of about 65 or 67, give or take. Okay. And then once we finish up with the draft and free agency, we'll have, mid 90s, which is a lot. So
that is a lot,
it's not what a lot of people necessarily think. So we'll carry that for the majority of the offseason training program and all of preseason. And then at the end of the final preseason game, you have until, I think, that Monday to cut your roster down to 53, and then you sign back 10 players to the practice squad. But now it's changing. You can sign back even more now, I believe, with what they agreed upon in the CBA. I have to go back and check that out.
That's right, yeah.
It's changing a lot of things.
Yeah.
But for the most part, majority of the guys kind of manage things themselves. Now, if there are specific things that pop up, whether it's an injured player or somebody just flagged because of body comp issues, weight issues, then we'll definitely take them under our wing and be like, all right, this is where you're at. This is where we think you can be or should be. These are the steps we're going to take to get you there. Do some basic education. Tell them we'll make it as easily as possible, as fail safe, because everything's provided for them in house.
Yeah.
And then go from there. A lot of players are very interested. They'll ask a lot of questions, but you also have a lot of non-adopters. And that's with like almost anything that we do, whether it's any of the monitoring tactics we use, any of the, things we provide in medical recovery wise. Guys they just don't buy in, and it's our job to try to find ways to get into them and pierce them.
Yeah.
But and some players, they'll come to me like, just tell me what to do, I'll do it. Some are like, well, I just need some help with dinner because I'm going home and I like cooking, but I just don't know what to cook when I'm looking at my stove and my fridge. I just don't know how to put meals together. Right. And they're getting taught a lot better during college because the resources available in the NCAA have really improved over the past 10 years. My first job was at Kansas State and then Michigan State, and what colleges have been able to do since then has been amazing. Meet the needs of what are the energy demands for all these players, because they're there for pretty much the entire year.
Yeah.
And there's a lot expected out of them. They don't have a lot of money to take care of that stuff themselves, and they don't know yet. So a lot of colleges have standalone sports nutrition departments where the education's right there and then. They're taking care of 2 to 3 meals, everything on the home and road, which is great. But the problem is a lot of it is everything's becoming spoon-fed to these athletes. So, they have their whole schedule mapped out from when they wake up to when they go to bed. This is your lift, this is your treatment time, this is your meeting time, this is your class time, this is your tutor. this is your training table, this is your homework time, and then you go to bed. And so it kind of defeats the purpose of them having autonomy and getting a chance to think for themselves, is what most people go through when they're in college. Now,
right.
a lot of information is taught to them, which is great, but at that time in their life, when these kids are 17, 18 to 21, 22, how much of importance do they put on that? Or is it just they're thinking about balling out and getting to the league,
right,
or, hurry up and finishing X, Y, and Z because they're thinking about that next step. So that's when we get them, and then we have to retrain them from ground zero to go over some nutrition basics, maybe some more advanced basics of nutrition, performance, recovery, and then tailor it individually to their learning styles too.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point. And it's funny, like I'm thinking about myself when I came out of school. So I played football at Princeton, and, we had dining halls, and we have this whole other system called eating clubs, which could be a whole separate podcast for anyone who's interested. But, we didn't necessarily have, like, I think the hands-on nutritional training that I know that like top programs are getting today at the collegiate level. So I even felt that way. Like, when I went into the working world, I was like, what the hell am I supposed to be eating?
Yeah.
So like, maybe that's a really good question. What are some of like kind of the basic nutritional principles that you're trying to arm these young players with so that they can make good decisions once they get outside your walls?
Yeah, we try to form it more as just sports nutrition basics to try to let them know that they are elite level athletes because they are playing in the NFL.
Right.
So their energy demands and what they need to be eating and doing is going to be different than anything that they've heard on the news, anything they've seen in a Netflix documentary, anything that they've read on Twitter or seen on Instagram. The normal population needs do not apply to them. There's a lot of similarities, but most people aren't, lifting 4 or 5 times a week and then going and running around on the practice field for up to 2 hours a day. I mean, the lifting part's easy. Like they're going to lift harder in college than they will in the NFL. That's just the truth of the matter. The stuff they do on field, obviously you've done it before, but now I assume you don't want to do it again at this stage in your life. And I know I can't do it. I'm watching, our receivers and defensive backs just run all over the field, change direction, hit these top speeds for 2 hours. Yeah. And I'm thinking, oh Lord, just the amount of trauma and energy expended in that session. And even our linemen, going up against each other physically, just when full pads are on, they're still going after it because these guys are trying to make a team and try to put food on the table for their kids and provide for their wife and mom and dad and everybody under the sun.
Yep.
So one is just understanding, what their specific needs are and just looking at it as an individual player, not trying to just blanket cover all football players because we've got even linemen in the same position group that have very different needs. So one is just looking at just their anthropometric assessments. What is their weight? What is their body comp? Do some more advanced metrics on them just to kind of see where they're at. Yeah. At this stage of their career, whether you're a vet or whether you're a 23, 24-year-old player, you're probably not going to change your body in terms of putting on a significant amount of muscle mass. You're not going to change positions unless it's like you're a tweener. You're a safety outside linebacker. You can go up or you can go down. That's where we try to start with these guys to let them know that this is where you're at. This is where we think you potentially can be based on, what the position coach, what the coordinator is seeing on film. Yeah. It's like, oh, I think this guy, he strikes really well. He's very strong, but he needs to be more explosive. So, all right, looking at this guy, like, yeah, he does carry a little bit too much adipose fat tissue on him. So he can lean out, and that's going to improve his ability to get off the ball quickly. Or if it's a skill guy who has, really narrow hips, but he's got broad shoulders, he's got, wide knee girths, but he looks a little bit leaner than what he could potentially play at. We think, all right, well, he could probably, add on 5 pounds, not anything crazy, because we expect him to, run down the field at 20, 21 miles an hour repeatedly. Yeah. So, being very realistic about where these guys can go. And then from that, it's just kind of putting together a basic plan to say, all right, we know what the schedule looks like. We know when you're lifting. We know when practice is. These are your opportunities to, eat and hydrate during the day to maximize what you're going to be doing for the energy demands, whether it's a lift where guys just have this very strange preconceived notion that, the only time that they can gain weight is when they lift, and, they'll slam protein and drink all these shakes and eat really heavily after lift as opposed to after practice. But the energy demands of practice significantly outweigh any lift that they're going to do. If I can do the lifts, then I know that it's not just super crazy intense.
Good point. Yeah.
So just starting from there and trying to just teach you guys about what exactly they need to be successful, whether it's just some basic health principles, because health really intertwines closely with performance. So we look at blood biomarkers, the guys opt in and, get their blood drawn at multiple times during the year and the season. So we can just see what's going on, what the inflammatory markers look like. What is their, lipid status? What is their micronutrient status? What is their muscle metabolism status? That way we can adjust anything on the fly.
Yeah.
And then they even look at the team as a whole. Like, are there peaks and valleys in certain things that we need to be aware of? Like, is the team getting healthier as the season progresses, or, are they significantly becoming more inflamed at certain time points? That way we can be more proactive next year with what we do as a performance staff as a whole.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so, there's a lot of things that I want to ask you about, but I guess one of the things, so here's what I get a lot from friends, and a lot of my friends are former collegiate athletes and professional athletes at some level, but even they have a tough time, like, understanding like what a proper nutrition should look like at this stage in their life. And what I'm wondering is, people have so many different approaches. Like, some people will talk about like tracking their macros till they're blue in the face. Other people will talk about the timing of their car. Like, there's all these different things. And I'm just wondering, knowing that the demands of a professional athlete are different than like a working professional, like how are you communicating the guidelines to your players? And what I mean by that is, like, are you talking to them in terms of macros? Are you talking to them in terms of like just broader, ways to make choices? Like, how do you communicate that to such a diverse group of guys?
I think one is just kind of, we'll try to do some larger group sessions where we just introduce a specific topic, talk about it for a couple minutes. And that way we're just hitting these different educational installs. And then it can kind of open the door to guys being a little bit more aware of, something that they may not have been taught before. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them might have questions after that, and they'll come up to me and be like, "Oh, I've always been wondering about this. Can you go a little bit deeper in depth with that?" I think it really depends. It varies person to person, the same way that each player learns really differently in terms of learning a scheme or coverage or an assignment. Some can just watch film of somebody else doing it and understand, like, all right, this is exactly what I need to do. Some can just be spoken to, in a unit meeting before any film goes out. They're installing plays. They're explaining exactly what's going to happen in this formation or this coverage or this shift, this alignment, anything like that. Mm-hmm. Some players need to actually just physically get up and do it. So they hear the call, they look around, they see, what's going on the other side of the ball. They see what's going on with everybody else, and then they can be in there visually. And I think players learn about strength and conditioning principles and nutrition principles the same way. Sometimes I can have a conversation with the guy face to face and just go over a topic, and they're like, yeah, that makes sense. I got it. Some are like, hey, can you text that information to me? Because their phone's always going to be on their side. Some are like, can you just write it down, and I'm going to stick it in the bulletin board in my locker, and that way every morning when I come in, I can see it. Mm-hmm. Or do I have to physically be there with them while they're going through the lunch line and just say, hey, remember, this is what your goal is for today. This is what the aim is. You want to make sure you eat this, this, and this, and not these choices, and this is the reason why. Or, are we also utilizing our food service staff to provide the same messaging too? So there's a variety of different ways to do it. So it's not just giving them numbers or giving them macros. Some of it could be just pictures or food diagrams, or just, use your fist for a serving and half your plate should be this. That way, they can remember it a little bit easier, just identifying the way that person learns and just tailoring that information to their needs.
Yeah. So you mentioned the post-workout shake, and I definitely wanted to ask you about that today, because that is, I feel like, right or wrong, that's where most people go. Because to your point, it's like they associate weight training with putting on muscle, and for good reason, I think, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And everyone's like, well, what should I be taking? And like, the supplement market is so confusing. And I know that you guys operate in a highly regulated, I don't know, I guess I'll call it an arena. So from your perspective, and again, we're talking about high performing athletes, but I think there's a lot of folks out there who either have like strength goals, power goals. There's a whole diverse world of athletes out there beyond college. What do you think are like the basic, staples of an effective like post-workout shake or supplement?
Yeah, I think the general term, it depends, and you get that answer a lot, but overall it's just understanding any type of training you're doing, you're going to be breaking down energy stores and you're going to be breaking down muscle tissue, whether it's a lift, whether it's a run. It just depends on the intensity and duration of what you're doing. And then you got to figure out what your goals are. And then looking forward, there's a lot of really good research out there in terms of, obviously you need some type of protein or amino acid source. Now, if you're a professional athlete who has a very tightly structured day and you don't have 100% control of your meals, now, even if it's just a lift day and you've got to practice the next day, then you're going to want something with protein and carbohydrates with it as soon as possible. And everybody talks about the anabolic window. And for athletes or people that are training multiple times a day, there is that anabolic window where, if you have a second workout later on in the day, then you can't wait to get, your amino acids and your carbs and all the other micronutrients that your body's going to need. If you're a normal athlete, like yourself or myself, who just likes to lift, stay in shape and whatnot, then that anabolic window isn't 100% necessary to just chug something the second the last bar or last rep finishes. You're not gonna lose your gains, because muscle protein synthesis happens for up to 24 hours. So as long as you have some amino acids in the body, then you're going to continually stimulate that. And the goal is to get like at least 30 grams of high quality protein. If it's a large muscle mass activity movement where you're working multiple body parts, which is usually what people do in a lift, you're going to want at least 40 grams, if not more.
Of protein?
Of protein.
Okay.
The carbohydrate needs after a lift aren't super high, because, unless you're doing a marathon lifting session where you're going all out for, 4 sets of 4 exercises, or you're doing a 10 by 10, something like that, then you can replenish muscle glycogen at a rate of, I think, somewhere about 5% per hour if you've exhausted it completely. Now, this plays more in a role of a football player in season that's going through training and then has to be ready for game day. But as opposed, for a normal person, you don't have to slam a ton of carbs after it, because
Go ahead.
Because you'll be able to replenish that muscle glycogen over the course of the next day if your workout's at the same time 24 hours later. Now, there's a lot of emerging evidence that says that it might be even a little bit more beneficial to hold off for about an hour, 2 hours, because you can get a greater growth hormone response, greater testosterone response, if you don't just slam that shake immediately afterwards. So what might be more beneficial is, and again, there's a lot of different schools of thought. There's no one right way or wrong way to do it. Whatever works with your routine that you feel most comfortable with. Some people like drinking something immediately after. Some can say, well, I'm going to go shower, I'm going to get ready, and then I'm going to have my either post-workout meal, or I'm going to have my more dedicated shake. Or it could be something where if you don't necessarily want to do a protein shake, but you want something quick, it could be something with essential amino acids, like 10 grams. And maybe you can add some creatine, some like sodium, some magnesium, something else to go along with that. So, again, there's a lot of different ways to do it. There's no one right or wrong way to answer that question. And I know it's probably not exactly what you wanted to hear, but there is benefit to drinking something afterwards. It kind of just depends.
Yeah. And I get the sense that a lot of what's out there is not necessary. I mean, I don't, that's hard because that's such a blanket statement. I'm not giving you any example of like what I'm referring to, but it sounds like, I mean, you went immediately to like protein, right? Number one, carbs, but it sounds like, because what I've always heard is like, hey, there's this 30-minute window, like you have 30 minutes after like a hard workout, like that is when you want to like slam all this stuff. And it's interesting because now you're saying that there actually might be evidence counter to that, saying that if you wait a couple hours, right, that could actually improve like the human growth hormone response, correct? Okay. So now I'm even more confused. So now I don't know what to do.
Well, I'd say that 30-minute window plays more if you're a person doing multiple workouts in a day. So say we're looking at an athlete with us who's going to be lifting in the morning, but's going to practice in the afternoon.
Yep.
So obviously that plays a role with, you have to go immediately afterwards. There's no delaying. Or if you're doing a bunch of CrossFit workouts, or you're doing a competition, or you're a triathlete who's got, something in the morning, or an endurance athlete who's doing something in the morning and then something in the evening, that's where it comes into play where, you need to do it as soon as after your workouts, add in more carbohydrate because you've got a secondary session later on.
Got it. And so now it's all clicking, because you were saying they need to replenish those glycogen stores in a much shorter time frame. Whereas the average person, like let's say you do a workout Monday morning and then you're going to come back at the same time Tuesday. Like you have 24 hours and you can kind of like steadily replenish those glycogen stores over that time frame. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, cool. I think that's helpful for people. Podcast over. No, just kidding.
Well, damn.
Yeah, that was easy. No, okay, that's awesome. And then you brought up creatine. And I actually, that's the first way that I stumbled upon you. You'd written something in the past on creatine that someone had passed me. And the reason I like creatine is it's been incredibly well researched, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and the safety of it is we're the nutritional, what's the word I'm looking here for? Community is pretty much all in agreement that creatine's safe. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, 100%.
And is that something that for your athletes, you guys recommend that they add to their post-workout supplement routine?
Yeah, and I'd say the reason why is understanding what energy systems are football players working in. And I did a presentation last year to the Dr. Andrews Health Institute, just looking at, when we put together these nutrition prescriptions for what exactly a football player needs or what they should consume. Obviously it's very heavily carb based because they are, anaerobic glycolytic athletes. They're operating within, 6 seconds or less, but some plays can go for 15 to 20 seconds and then they get long rest periods. Yeah. So that's when they're breaking down fat stores during those rest periods. But, they're breaking down a lot of creatine phosphate. So, if in a 6-second all out sprint, you're breaking down muscle creatine stores, but you're also breaking down glycogen too. Yeah. So 50% of the contribution to energy or ATP production is from creatine phosphate. The rest is coming from muscle glycogen. So they're breaking down their stores regularly. They're also lifting. So, we know that lifting, sprinting, jumping, really high power type sports, movements, break down muscle creatine stores, creatine phosphate stores. So that's why creatine is really important for those type of, power athletes, weightlifters, Olympic athletes, things of that nature. But they've, like you said, they've done tons of research over the years on creatine phosphate, and it's hard to even point out, has there been anything that has been negatively studied as an adverse effect? And the overwhelming evidence is not really. Yeah. Like you might have a condition here or there, or if you have an athlete that's very sensitive for their weight class and they can't even squeeze another ounce on the scale because it might detrimentally affect the performance. Well, yeah, we know that when you take creatine, it stores in the muscle. It also bounds water the same way carbs do. Yeah. When you store it as muscle glycogen, that's why you get that full feeling. That's why people say, well, it's just water weight. Well, yeah, because every time if you're super loading creatine in the muscle, you're also adding in that water that stores with it as well. The article you talked about, I wrote it for the NSCA. So just looking at it from a practitioner coach's standpoint on, what are the different ways creatine can help athletes, what type of athletes. And so it's not just for lifting. They've looked at it as a compensatory mechanism to help with protecting muscle during high intensity training, helps decrease inflammatory markers in endurance athletes. They've also looked at it in the role of cognitive performance in the brain, its role in concussions. Yeah. I mean, there's even more emerging evidence that I didn't really talk about in that paper because it's looking more as a health and clinical aspect where it could be beneficial with people that have type 2 diabetes, heart failure patients, cardiovascular disease patients. It plays a role in bone modeling and formation. I mean, it's one of those things where you could take it like a 5-gram dose, which is kind of your standard average every day for the rest of your life, and actually probably be more beneficial and be healthier than not taking it. Something I've taken every day for probably the past 5 years, and I don't cycle it. I just take it every day.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny. I remember when I was playing. So let me think about this. My last season was in 2009. So I get, a little over 10 years ago. I remember, and I pulled my hamstring the first day of my last season. And there's a whole host of reasons why that might have happened, but we won't go into those. And I remember like at that time, someone came over and was like, well, you got to get off the creatine. Yeah. Like, what? I got to get off the creatine. Like, well, I'm not even really on creatine. I don't think you can be on it. But now I think that's kind of like the general myth, right? Is it dehydrates you. It can cause muscle pulls or muscle tears, right? And for most, all intents and purposes, right, that's kind of been disproven, correct?
Yeah. And there was a couple studies published. There was this football team that started supplementing, and they went through their preseason camp. This is a college team. Okay. And I think in season 2, and what they found, especially during those higher intense training bouts, which you see in camp, just given that the players have a little bit of a layoff, and then they see some of the highest workloads at that time. And same thing with the NFL. You have the highest incidences in injuries during the end of the first week going into the second week of training camp. Those that supplement with creatine had a lower incidence of soft tissue injuries. They actually had a lower incidences of cramping and dehydration. So it's one of those things that we're still dealing with, that preconceived notion that, oh man, if you pulled a hamstring, it's because of creatine. And a lot of players that have taken it in college that we have or have had in the past, or I've worked with in the past, have kind of made that association. But when you do more of a deep dive and you ask about, well, what were the other factors going on when you did pull your hamstring? Like, what was your training volume like? Were you physically prepared? What was your weight like? Like, was your body ready to handle the demands of what you were doing? Or was it just, a lot of things culminating at once, and then, you just happen to be supplementing with creatine at the time. So we're just that's going to be the red herring. I'm going to throw creatine underneath the bus. Right. And now everybody believes it because it's said in all these circles. Maybe an athletic trainer heard it and has been saying it for a while, or a strength coach heard it and has been saying it for a while. So these are things I've heard. I hear often, and, unfortunately, there's not a ton of evidence in terms of looking at a football team supplementing it for the course of a season, because it's really difficult to do. You also have the NCAA and what they're able to and not able to provide their athletes to. So it's not as well known and mainstream as we'd want it to be. And I think it's one of those things that every single one of our players should be taking. And it's one of those things that I'm going to try to, educate them on one of the benefits, how to take it, and why they should be taking it.
Yeah. And one of the things that I found, and again, I read it in that paper that you wrote, but prior to that, I also saw that there was evidence that it improves cognitive function. And that was really intriguing to me. So one of the things, again, I played football since I was, tackle since I was like 9, which now there's a lot of parents across America that'll go, oh, yeah,
can't do that.
They'll shudder. But, and I played through college until I was like 23. 23. Geez. And, but like, man, maybe like 4 or 5 years after I graduated, I felt like I was having, memory issues, or I was just like slowing down. And I was like, oh God. And that was right when all this stuff came out about CTE. And I was like, all right, let me take a step back before I freak out. Like, there's a lot of other things going on in my life. Like, I'm out drinking, I'm not sleeping well, my nutrition's. I was like, let me try and check some of those boxes first. And like, lo and behold, like, when I sleep better, I think better, all these other things kind of like come into the fold that start creating like better habits for me. But when I read that about creatine, I was like, oh, perfect. Like, let me add that in and let's see if that helps. And it's kind of hard to pinpoint whether or not that's something that's directly contributing. I like to think that it is, especially since like the research points in that direction. But on that kind of topic, because I think that whether you're a professional athlete or not is something that's super interesting for people. Are there any other supplements that you have seen like, enough evidence for that can also help improve cognitive function that either you take for yourself or that you recommend for people who are looking to improve that sort of aspect of their life?
Yeah, it's looking at different things like nootropics or substances that can cross the blood-brain barrier. Creatine's one of them. Curcumin, the highly anti-inflammatory compound, and turmeric. People are looking at a lot of adaptogenic mushrooms like cordyceps. Yep. And that's something that, is very promising. There's not a ton of research as opposed to creatine and even curcumin. Caffeine's another one too. Right. Caffeine's great. Obviously,
as I hold up my cup of, I'm not a tea drinker, but I was out in the yard all day working, and I was like, oh man, I need a little pick me up.
Little boost. Yeah. Which is interesting because, there's some good research looking at nutrigenomics and do people have this caffeine gene or not, where some could be looked at as fast metabolizers and some can be looked at as slow metabolizers. So the ones that are fast metabolizers get the ergogenic benefit, but the ones that are slow metabolizers is actually more detrimental to their health and performance. And you'd have to strategically try to find a way to dose it. Yeah. Dr. Nancy Guest done a lot of really good research, Craig Pickering. It's really interesting stuff and kind of opens up a lot of people's eyes of, I've had athletes in the past, like really high level track and field athletes that say like they can't have, they obviously want to take things that are going to help their performance and help keep them dialed in. And, the general ones, whey protein, creatine, caffeine, the ones that you think do no harm. Some of them are verbalizing like, they're like, yeah, I can't even take like a small cup of coffee with 60 or 80 milligrams of coffee because they know that it just messes them up and then they can't sleep at night, even if they take it at like 8 a.m. or 10 a.m. So they're the ones that, and it's about 10% of the population have the slow metabolizer gene, as opposed to everybody else, 10 to 15%. And everybody else actually is a pretty good responder, a fast metabolizer or hyper metabolizer of it.
Oh man. So I have to imagine, are there a bunch of other, like for the slow metabolizers out there, are there a whole other host of issues that they kind of have to contend with that the other 90% doesn't have to deal with? Or is it just kind of like very specific use cases like that where that would show up for them?
Actually, I wrote an article about caffeine before that creatine one, and I kind of touched on this a little bit.
I'm going to link to all of those in the show notes. I have the creatine one, but I'll find the caffeine one as well.
Okay. And if you can't find it, I can send it to you too.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Thank you. I'll let you know.
Yeah. So the people that are slow metabolizers, I won't go super in depth in detail with it, but because I know we're talking more about nootropics and brain function and cognitive function, it's that there's more issues with, increasing heart rate, anxiety, heart palpitations, induces a negative cardiovascular effect that, that's not warranted and it's not what they want. So they don't peak with the ergogenic benefits of caffeine at the same time as somebody that's a fast metabolizer who knows that, yeah, I can take it and I can either feel it within 15 or 30 minutes, although it takes a little bit longer, but it could be just that natural process of taking something that's, advertised as a stimulant and the body going, oh yeah, I'm good to go.
Right. Yeah.
The brain can override anything.
A little placebo effect.
To where it might not even be beneficial for them to even take any caffeine, and unless they really want to try to work it out and they know that it's not a significant effect that's going to negatively affect, the heart health or overall general health, where they would want to dose it well out in advance, where it could be something that if they are performing later on in the afternoon or in the evening, they would want to take it earlier on in the morning or mid-morning, as opposed to what, if we were playing a football game at 1 p.m. Eastern, guys are just guzzling everything at 12, or if it's a 7 p.m. Eastern game, guys are doing the same thing in the locker room at, 6 or 5:30.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you say slow metabolizer, like now I'm thinking more broadly, right? Like the people who have no problem like losing weight or always seem to stay lean. Am I thinking about it the right way, that like that's the person with the fast metabolism and the slow metabolizer might be the person who's like, I can never seem to shed weight? Or are we talking about like, is this two completely separate different things?
Two completely separate different things, because you've got these single nucleotide polymorphisms, people call them SNPs, and it's just how the way that the genetic information is coded. Like some people have, the gene that can metabolize it really quickly, some people can't. So it's independent of if somebody's an overweight person who struggles with their weight, as opposed to the person who's lean, who eats pizza and drinks beer all the time and just maintains 10% body fat without even trying.
Yeah. So you're talking about the way that person can metabolize the caffeine. Okay, because I could see there's a bunch of people listening. They're like, I know I'm that slow metabolizer. So like, ask a question about how I fixed it. But okay, cool. Just wanted to clarify that. So back on this topic of nootropics. So creatine, really well studied. The consensus is it's safe. Host of other benefits, but a nootropic benefit is one of them. You said curcumin. I can never pronounce it. Am I pronouncing that right?
Yeah, curcumin.
Curcumin. Okay, I'm close. What are some other ones that you believe are actually effective? You mentioned cordyceps. I feel like mushrooms are having like this revival right now.
Yeah.
And full disclosure, I do take Shroom Tech from Onnit.
Yeah.
Onnit seems to be, well, let me just ask you, and you're not endorsing them, but Onnit's a pretty trustworthy company. No?
Yeah. They've got some NSF certified for sport products. They work really closely with Exos Performance Training Centers.
That's right.
They've got a pretty good product line. I like some of their stuff.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I've always been really interested in the stuff that they're putting out. Okay, so cordyceps. Is there anything else? And actually, could we even talk just broadly, because this might be the first time people listening are hearing the term nootropic. Can you just kind of talk about like what that term means?
Yeah, in a broad-based sense, without going super crazy into it, it's just something that can positively benefit cognitive function while in improving brain health, so to speak, whether it's, acting on the central nervous system or helping improve mitochondrial function or improving ATP production in the brain. It's kind of how, I look at some of these things, and there's a lot of different things you can take. Like we already mentioned a few.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff that's touted out there that necessarily hasn't been studied. You see all these formulations that are coming out, and sometimes, people are just kind of taking one causal or association that could potentially help cognitive function and running with it. Outside of the ones that we talked to that are tried and true, another positive one that has seen some benefit that I've read some research papers about is like dietary nitrates and beetroot, things of that nature, because that can cross the blood-brain barrier. And I've seen a couple of things that have shown that it can, help maintain cognitive function in certain types of environments.
Interesting. Is that something that you guys talk to your players about at all? I mean, because I know well, let me take a step back. I imagine teams are looking for every edge possible, right? Like to help their guys perform in their peak performance state. Is nootropics something that your team, if you can't talk to your team specifically, broadly, that other nutritionists and strength and conditioning coaches are exploring for their athletes?
I think, to an extent, yes, we're trying to find, foods and nutrients and compounds that are being studied that can provide a potential benefit that can help maintain cognitive function, mainly in times of mental and physical fatigue more than anything else. But also if there's a benefit that, we know some of these guys have issues focusing and studying and learning in classroom settings, which is what players do when they're in meetings. Right. The college kids think that they're done with classes the second they get out of college, and it's like, actually, you're just getting right back into it, but more professional setting.
Yeah.
What we try to do and what we recommend, and it's what the NFL feels very strongly about, is any type of supplement that is either provided for managing a deficiency or recommended that the player, go out and purchase on their own, has to be NSF certified for sports. So that's the third party testing company that tests, make sure that the products that are out there based on lot and number and serial number and all that just have been tested to not have any banned substances in it, which is really important. So the majority of product, the majority of products that are out there aren't third-party tested. A handful of them are, but most of them aren't. So that's where you get in that fine line of, you could be dealing with a company that's pretty reputable and they're putting out a product, whether it's a pill or a powder, and based on the ingredient label, there's nothing in it, but maybe that company also produces like a T booster or a pro hormone or something along those lines. And, when you have all these companies making different products, whether, something should be fine or shouldn't, there's always the potential of adulteration or cross-contamination. And then sometimes you have multiple companies in the same space because not everybody can fund their own manufacturing plant.
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah.
So again,
they're outsourcing it to a place that does supplements for multiple companies, and they might have various Yeah.
So you always run that risk. But the good thing now, as opposed to, when I first started, 10 plus years ago, is that there's so many companies that are going that route of NSF certified for sport, or if you're a collegiate athlete or somebody else that just needs another third party, Informed Choice, Informed Sport is also very good too. There's tons of options. So if a guy comes up to me, he's like, hey, I bought this, and I look at it, I'm like, here's another alternative. Either we can try to provide it for you if it's a deficiency thing, or just go on Amazon, or here's the company, they'll give you 60% off plus free shipping.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense. Well, and I'm actually a big fan too, or have become a big fan of the UFC. So if like anyone's looked at my Instagram, like more often than not, there's probably like some old UFC fight on in the background. But it's shown up a lot there recently where guys are getting suspended because they have like, and I'm going to totally butcher the correct vocabulary for this, but like very trace amounts left of a banned substance. And a lot of times they're saying like, look, I mean, everyone does, but they're like, look, I really didn't take that, and they're finding that in some of these cases, they are able to prove like it was cross-contamination. And I imagine in all likelihood, it could very well be because of some of the issues that you just like laid out.
And I remember seeing, there was a picture of I think it was a featherweight fighter getting prepared for a fight. So, probably at the tail end of his cut. Yeah. And he was taking all these supplements, obviously, because nutrition's super dialed in, or maybe he just needed to be more aggressive with his weight loss. So I think he was in a hotel, just sitting down at the little desk area that hotels have. And there was just bottles and bottles of pills, just all different types. And I don't know if you can necessarily see exactly what it is, but they're all congregated together. So you can't see some of the ones in the middle, but just by the color of the bottle and looking at the labels, I'm like, I would guess all of those weren't third-party tested, to be honest. So that, you know, is getting it maybe from the local vitamin shop or GNC or the supermarket, which has, you know, most supermarkets now sell a bunch of sports nutrition products.
Oh, it's crazy.
And I think that athlete did test positive, and I'm looking and I'm like, it's not surprising he did. Obviously it was unfortunate, and maybe he wasn't trying to, you know, be deceptive or take something, you know, he wasn't supposed to. But when you look at the process of going about it, I'm sure there were people that he's been able to work with at the UFC. If he trains at the UFC Performance Institute out there in Vegas, they've got some really good practitioners that definitely know that they're doing, and they're never going to put their athletes in harm's way. Or maybe he was listening to somebody in his camp who was telling him this is how you need to cut to get down, and these are all the things you need to take. So unfortunately it didn't work out in his favor.
Yeah. So that's actually just a good rule of thumb too. So if you're concerned about safety, NSF is kind of like the governing body. Now, is that the governing body that the NFL adheres to, or is that the governing body that multiple professional organizations in the States adhere to?
It's multiple, but the NFL is definitely super supportive of NSF. Now, at the college level, then you also get NSF and Informed Choice, Informed Sport as well.
Informed Choice, Informed Sport. Okay. That's good to know. Yeah, because I think I've already said this multiple times. There's like so much snake oil out there.
Yeah.
You know, and especially like now I'm older and I try and make good choices, but you know, people who are listening who have young kids, you know, I mean, kids they see the supplements and they want every edge they can get to. And so it's like, I think that's probably something that's good for people to be aware of is like, look, is it being tested by a third party? And here's some of the third parties that you can be aware of, that you can kind of vet out, you know, some of the supplements that either you or, you know, your young athletes might be taking.
Yeah. And I was in that same camp. You know, I played football. I ran track in high school, and I was reading the Flex magazines and everything. And I'm like, I want to look like that guy. He's so jacked. And then you see the advertisement right there in the middle of the magazine where he's taking this creatine and this protein. And then you have this automatic association because at that age, no one's really taught you about nutrition, and you haven't taken supplements before because it wasn't necessarily taboo, but it wasn't anything that was on your radar. So there's association. Like if I take this, I'm going to look like that. So I fell hook, line, and sinker. I spent more money on random stuff than I needed to for years up until I started learning about this stuff in college. And even then I was still very baseline, very broad, not in depth with my knowledge. And I've probably wasted thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on stuff that just doesn't work. Trying to chase this dream of looking like that guy or trying to be that lean. You know, obviously now I know better, and applying, you know, the basics will never ever not work for you. That's what I don't want people to fall into, the same trap that I did and try to get, you know, have false hope. When if I could go back and do it all over again, I totally would. You know, because now I'm armed with this knowledge, and that's the goal, is to share that knowledge with everybody else to help them get to where they want to be at this stage in their life.
Yeah. Well, we're very thankful that you're doing that. So that's a good point. Okay. So tried and true basics, right? The things that are proven to work, right? Like if you could go back and tell yourself at 18, like, look, this is the stuff that you really need that'll actually help you move the needle. I'm sure we've talked about some of it. So there's protein, creatine, carbs, this myth of, you know, needing to slam it within 30 minutes is not necessarily true unless you're doing like another intensive exercise, maybe later in the same day. Stop me if I get any of this wrong, because I don't want to be giving people poor information. Anything else, and then we can move on from the supplement piece of it that people should consider. So I take glutamine. Actually, selfishly, I'll just ask you: good, bad, unnecessary?
I think it has its place. Now the studies haven't been overwhelming with it, but if you're a person who either does a lot of fasting or controls your diet or manipulates it, so you have, you know, periods of lower intake, or you're trying to lean out pretty significantly, I think it has its role. Now, the studies haven't necessarily looked at those situations, so it hasn't been shown to be super beneficial, but it is, you know, one of the most abundant amino acids in the body. And in times of extreme stress or trauma caused by cutting out a lot of food or fasting, I think it definitely has its place. So I'm not opposed to glutamine at all. I mean, I take it in post-workout form, just because it's packaged in this creatine beta alanine mixture that I have. and it's tasty. So I like it. Whatever. It's not hurting me at all.
Yeah. Okay.
What else? I mean, without being too super supplementy and throwing everything under the sun that everybody should be taking, because I think, as long as you've got a well-rounded diet and you don't eat a lot of junk and you try to eat like a lot of fresh food, not a lot of packaged stuff. I mean, a really good quality protein, whether it's, whey or, if you're plant-based, like a lot of people are, or you just, you have an allergy. I've worked with players in the past that have, dairy allergies, so they can't do any whey at all. Some type of protein powder, an essential amino acid. I think this needs to be studied a lot more, but there's some emerging evidence that, getting the essential amino acids as opposed to just chugging protein shakes all day can be definitely more beneficial. And the reason is you take protein in because it breaks down in the body into amino acids. Yeah. So you need these essential ones because the body can't make them. So if you get these 8 or 9 conditionally essential amino acids in the diet from a variety of different sources, I mean, the highest quality you're going to come from meat and animal products, then you're going to get these 8 or 9, which you can make all these thousands of amino acids that the body needs. Yeah. And that's the importance of eating protein consistently, because you have this amino acid pool that turns over every day. So there's breakdown, buildup, breakdown, buildup, breakdown, buildup. Now, training and lifting and doing a lot of stuff can accelerate the breakdown. That's why you need to have this amino acid pool consistently throughout the day. So if you're lifting, it's what we talked about before, and you have this breakdown, you don't necessarily have to chug protein right afterwards, because as long as you over the course of the rest of the day, 24 hours, you have a positive net protein balance, then that's means you're in positive net protein synthesis. You'll be able to build muscle over that time span. Unless you're an athlete who's just, you got lift, you got practice, or you've got, this event, this event, this event, this event.
Right.
That changes.
Yeah.
So
because I'm wondering, and maybe people listening are too, when you say the essential amino acids, does that mean, so like I actually supplement with BCAAs after I work out. Mm-hmm. Is that because I know that's a no-no.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Talk to me. All right. Why is that a no-no?
This has been something that, people have taken a hard line on for a really long time. So obviously the branched chain amino acids, isoleucine, leucine, and valine are necessary, because especially leucine, that's what stimulates muscle protein synthesis the most. That's the biggest trigger, but it works best when it's in conjunction with the other conditionally essential amino acids. So if you only take BCAAs, you only have 2 other ones besides leucine. So you need your 2.5 to 3 gram trigger to stimulate muscle protein synthesis, but it's most effective when you take it with the other conditionally essential amino acids. And there's a study just published, I read recently within the past couple weeks, that you even have a greater anabolic response if you combine a little bit of whey with some essential amino acids.
Okay.
So if
I'm doing protein after, so here's what I do. I'm just, people listening are like, this is just so selfish. So if I'm doing, because I just actually had a conversation. So we'll get into this. My buddy, he's a commentator for ESPN. He does college basketball. He's a former professional player in Europe. He's trying to lose weight. So he was asking about supplements. I was like, well, I can tell you what I can do, but we need to ask someone smarter. So you're that person who's smarter, who's getting asked. So I do protein, I do creatine, glutamine, and then I also just put in a scoop of branched chain amino acids as well after. Is that okay? Is that okay? Or is that the no-no?
I would say everything you're doing is good. You could probably swap out the BCAAs for like an essential amino acid mixture, 5 or 10 grams.
Okay.
And again, going back to the creatine study, if you're not super worried about assimilating creatine and maximizing muscle glycogen stores, then you don't necessarily need, the perfect protein carbohydrate combo. And then also there was also some evidence showing that if you have some electrolytes with that, so you're looking at like sodium, potassium, magnesium, calcium to go along with it, you assimilate the creatine at a much faster rate as well. It helps with creatine transport.
Okay. I love those electrolyte tablets.
Which ones?
Noon.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, electrolyte tablets, I think it's one of the things that people kind of that's missing in their diet, because if you look at just all the micronutrients, especially some of the electrolytes outside of sodium, which is really easy to get in the diet.
Yeah.
Sometimes for some people, potassium can be easy. For a lot of people, if you're a heavy exerciser, who restricts, that can be difficult, but mainly I would say more for just getting adequate calcium if you restrict dairy, but also magnesium. This is one thing that has been looked at quite a bit, where the unfortunate thing is if you got a blood test and you just look at serum magnesium, I'd say for 100% of the population, your ranges are going to be normal. And the reason is because if your magnesium levels seem to be low serum wise, you can resorb them from bone. So it's the body's, it's a mechanism that it just uses to maintain homeostasis. So if you're just looking at serum magnesium, I've looked at biomarkers for hundreds of draws for hundreds of different athletes over the past 5 years or so, and not a single one was deficient in serum magnesium. That's why you want to actually go to looking at our RBC magnesium if you have the ability to look at it at your test. So it's the red blood cell bound magnesium, and that's where you see more of those changes, and that's a better indicator of your overall magnesium status in the body. And it's not exact, and it's still work in progress, but I think that's one of those minerals that people need to be a little bit more aware of, because it has so many different roles in the body. Muscle, nerve, relaxation, cognitive function, so many different things.
Yeah, that's and I actually, I'm trying, man, I can't remember. I either read a book, or I don't know what, I was listening to something, but this idea that like to be well hydrated is to drink a lot of water throughout the day. Right. To just be. And so, I mean, I have so many friends, and I've been one of them. Like, they're like, oh, well, I'm going to drink, I don't know, 120 ounces of water. And they've got like their Nalgene bottle, and like, they're just force feeding themselves water. And then I read something. It's like, well, you can actually start like stripping your body of electrolytes if you like overhydrate with just water. And it's like, what you should be doing is like replenishing like electrolytes, minerals throughout the day. And I was like, oh, wow. So, and that must have been how I got put onto Noon, because I didn't want to just drink like Gatorades, or I guess maybe that's what I thought my choice was. But I again, it could be mental, but I actually think I feel better throughout the day. And I feel like adding that kind of to my like routine is something that has kind of like led me to have overall higher energy levels throughout the day.
Yeah, I think it's something that's really beneficial. And, people sometimes, like you said, when they say get more electrolytes, they automatically think sports drink, but there's a ton of different ways to get it in.
Okay.
Whether if you don't necessarily just want to get it through food, because not everybody is going to be able to optimize their micronutrient status. I don't think there's a single published study that shows that this type of diet can get you 100% of every micronutrient, which would be almost impossible. So there's going to be some supplementation. I mean, I supplement with, not necessarily now, because my workouts have been cut back pretty significantly, just given everybody's, stuck inside, and
given the world is at the
the intensity, and
it's crazy.
I'm not out like running and sprinting, don't necessarily have access to a field or anything like that, but I supplement with magnesium, calcium, because I don't do a ton of dairy. But with high protein diets, what happens is the environment becomes acidic, and it can leach calcium. So you definitely need to make sure that you get additional, especially if you're also a high caffeine user too.
Oh boy. Yep. Magnesium. Okay. I'm going to remember that one. Oh man, how are you on time, by the way?
Good.
Yeah, you're good. Okay. Stop me if, cause I won't keep you for hours, but it's just so interesting to me, and I'm glad that someone can finally answer a lot of this stuff. One of the questions that I had for you, and we talked about like what your athletes are doing prior to a competition, right? I guess my first question is, as it pertains to like nutrition and supplementation, what is that window of time where you tell them to start thinking about optimizing their diet leading up to a specific event? So the event for them is like the game Sunday night, maybe. Like, how far in advance are you having them think about like the preparation of their meals and, the nutrition that's going to be at play the time of their actual game?
In a perfect world, I'd say they're mindful of it the entire week. But, these are human beings who have a lot on their minds, and nutrition isn't the number one priority for them. It's my priority, but it's not theirs. So, it's my job to figure out how to get that information across to them. I would say ideally 48 hours prior. So, for a Sunday kickoff, they start thinking about it Friday. But, in a typical NFL season, you've got, and this is the standard way that things have happened, and it seems to work a little bit different than how colleges implement their strategies. But Sunday's the game. Monday, team comes in, they'll do some kind of movement lift. Tuesday's off, Wednesday, Thursday, or more intense practices. Friday is a practice, but it's dialed down, and the guys are out of the building pretty easily or pretty quickly. Saturday is kind of like your walkthrough, and then Sunday is a game. So everything is strategically done to lead up to game day. And some colleges have adopted that progressive Chip Kelly style where, your game day is Saturday, Sunday is the off day, and then everything's back in on Monday, and then it transitions heading into game day. So you don't have that off day 2 days after the game. You have it off after the game. So that hasn't set well with some NFL teams. Just the pros don't like it. Yeah. I think the way it works right now is set up to be the way it should be, because getting the guys in the day after a game, just to have them move around.
Yeah.
And not just sit and not do anything. That way, Tuesday, they can kind of gather themselves, get rested, do what they need to. Hopefully they're moving and not just sitting on the couch the entire day, because then the body's going to be tense. It's not going to allow for much blood flow. The tissues and, the fascia are not moving, not doing what it needs to. It's not going to alleviate any soreness. Right. So those players that don't move around on that Tuesday come back Wednesday and they're super sore. It's like, you can't be super sore. This is our first install for the week. We're trying to get ready for a game, which is in a few days.
Yeah.
Like, you can't be thinking, oh, I'm sore, when you should be thinking, what do I need to do on this play? Or what do I need to learn from what I just didn't learn on the next play,
Yeah, yeah.
So for nutrition, some good studies that they've looked at contact sports like rugby union, where you have increased energy expenditure up to 3 days after a game. And just looking at respiratory exchange ratio, what the players are burning more of are carbs.
Okay.
So obviously it makes sense. It's just the physical demand of the game, how much they're running, how much they're colliding, jumping, everything, sprinting. And then it kind of stabilizes and goes back to normal heading into like the day before game. But at the same token, like when you periodize what that nutrition should look like, you obviously still need to take into consideration that they are lifting throughout the week. They are still practicing. So you don't want to just on a day where it's been studied that their carbohydrate expenditure is down, which is a day or 2 days before the game, you don't take it all away, because they need to slowly still be overloading their muscles, not overloading, but loading their muscles with muscle glycogen.
Yeah.
And, most of these guys don't eat as well as they should, or, they're super stressed and they didn't eat much for breakfast, and now they're rolling into a practice and they're barely fueled. Now they're basically running on fumes for the entire practice, but they're a vet and they're physically superior to most people, so they're able to get through it. And now, you play this game where trying to identify them is the main thing.
Yeah.
And getting them ready for Sunday is important. So that's why I say 7 days is optimal, but a lot of these guys won't start thinking about it until maybe Saturday morning.
Okay.
Because then they're like, oh, I feel great. We're not practicing, we're not lifting. I can start to think about, getting everything ready, but there's a lot of things that NFL locker rooms do, in terms of tradition, whether you're traveling, they send the rookies to get, whatever fast food on, the Saturday before we head to the buses, and that's not going to change. So they're just scarfing down probably the worst options possible to get them ready for a game. It's not, again, I tell them like, hey, save it until after the game. We'll make the post-game meal fun, try to think about what you need to do to prepare, because we only get 16 opportunities to play a game and careers are so short, maximize it and then have the fun, but have the fun after.
Right. So you mentioned the worst possible option. What would be the best possible options for people? Because and there's all sorts of, again, very few people in the U.S. or in the world are gearing up for like an NFL style competition, but there's lots of people who do Spartan races. I do a decathlon once a year. Like, you know what I mean? Like for people who do want to, like, from a nutritional standpoint, in that 48-hour window, like what are the things that you would recommend that they try and do nutritionally?
I'd say just stay with a good consistent hydration plan and monitor their hydration levels, because obviously dehydration can negatively impact performance, especially in endurance events.
Yeah.
Where, I mean, you might, or in environmental events too, if it's hot weather and humid, you're going to be sweating more. So you're going to lose more body water. It's going to be harder to replenish it. Which also plays a role in cognitive function and, increasing muscle glycogen utilization. So I'd say, not going super crazy where you have to super compensate by eating like plates of pasta. I always go back to the
carb
Michael
loading.
Carb load,
right?
yeah. The Michael Scott, he eats fettuccine Alfredo before a 5K, and he's never done that before, and then he throws up. It's if you taper down appropriately, but your nutrition matches what that taper is, and then you make sure 72 hours leading into your competition that you're getting whatever carbohydrate range per kilogram, whether it's 5 to 7, or if it's an ultra type endurance marathon, something like that, upwards of like 10 to 12 grams per kg. Obviously, those athletes are more likely going to be smaller than football players, so it's not a football player trying to eat 10 grams per kg of carbohydrates, which is insane.
Yeah. 330-pound defensive lineman trying to eat that in carbs. Oh, they'd probably enjoy it though, quite frankly.
Yeah.
If you let them.
During, but not right after.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So how does someone correctly monitor their hydration? Because that's something that I felt like the guide stick that I was given, well, now we're getting into a whole weird thing, but what people told me to look for necessarily when I was like in high school maybe, or in college, might not really have been the best indicator of proper hydration. So like, what are the things you're telling your athletes to look for to ensure that like they're staying on track?
I think some of it is just, are they super thirsty during the day? Thirst is a good indicator that you're dehydrated. The body has a desire, need for water. That's why it's kicked in. They can monitor their urine color, but that's not always going to be super indicative of their hydration status. So say they take a multivitamin or a pre-workout with a bunch of B vitamins and everything gets flushed. They could be hydrated, but the color of the urine could be different. I mean, that happens to me after I take, my post-breakfast, like multivitamin, calcium, curcumin pill, an hour or so later when I have to go to the bathroom again, even though I feel like I'm hydrated, I'm like, and it's like,
neon,
lemon, lime. Yeah. I'm like, oh man, but I'm like, all right, I got to understand that.
Yeah.
What we try to do is there's a few different ways to actually, if you get a sample of urine from players, you can assess it using, you've got like a refractometer, a pen refractometer. So what it does, it reflects light. So it looks at just the number of solutes and the concentration. So regardless of color, you put the pen in, click the button, it gives you a readout right then and there. So it can tell you if you're hydrated, dehydrated based on what that number, the readout is. There's a couple other ways to do it, just checking urine osmolality too.
Okay.
But the most invasive and quickest one is to just use a pen refractometer. There are some reagent strips that you can urinate on and check. It gives you an idea, but from the research, it shows that can be up to 70% not very accurate. And I mean, are you going to put stock in something that's that inaccurate just to gauge your status? But those are some of the quick and easy, dirty ways. And then monitoring weight, like weight's probably one of the easiest ones. So what your actual body weight is when you wake up, you go to the bathroom, weigh yourself, completely naked. That's exactly what you're supposed to weigh. As long as you're hydrated. If you're dehydrated, the number's going to be down, obviously. And then during camp, every football team in the nation, college, pro, weighs their players, before and after practice to get an idea of what fluid losses are, because that's just the time of the year where it's a huge spike in training load. It's the hottest time of the year, especially for us up here in the Northeast. It gets humid out. So our first few weeks of training camp leading into the first few weeks of the season are generally going to be the hottest ones, where we take extra precautions about hydration. Not that it isn't important, but it's definitely more important during this time. And then, we've got 13 or 12 or 13 weeks where the weather changes and then it just gets cold and rainy and overcast and potentially snowy, which is really funny because we get both ends of the spectrum. So understanding what their weight shifts are and making sure that by the time they weigh in the next day, that there isn't a huge discrepancy from that previous day's weight. So, and everything gets graphed out and we can see it. And if there's something going amiss, like pull them aside to say, hey, we just need to make sure that you're doing exactly what you need to be doing, because if you're not, then it's going to be really detrimental to you performance wise. And then that's when guys are like, I'm not gaining weight. I'm dropping weight. And like, well, there's a variety of reasons. And one is you're just not monitoring, your hydration status.
Yeah. No, it's funny. Like I've really tried to pay attention to hydration these last few years, which that might sound weird talking to someone who just like works in sales, but I just noticed like I feel better. I really do feel like I think clearer, and it makes sense. What's the percentage of your body that's water? People always tell me this.
I mean, there's a range. It's like 75 right? to 80. Yeah, okay. 70 to 80. The majority of your body's made up of water.
Yeah, so it would make sense that like you need to be proper hydrated for everything to function properly. If using my back of the napkin math, I'm like, okay, probably best to make sure that
Yeah, not just for like physical exertion, but as you said, I mean, you feel a lot better if you're dehydrated. It's going to be a lot more difficult for you to sleep properly. You have increased heart rate. Yeah. I mean, that's another telltale sign if guys aren't hydrated going to sleep, it's going to affect their sleep. And if they wear like a sleep tracker or a ring, you can see those changes. And I can see them in myself too. If I didn't do a really good job of hydrating that day, you have increased heart rate during nighttime. Your body temperature increases too, and there's reasons for it.
What's your stance on like these biometric trackers? Because there's a whole like flood of technology that's come onto the market. Are you so it sounds like you use it personally. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So are you using that to like make decisions throughout the day? And like, I assume then you're seeing value in some of these trackers.
I think so. For me, the only thing I really wear, I don't wear an Apple Watch or a Galaxy Watch because I have an Android phone, just because, another thing that, emits an EMF Wi-Fi signal. It's like, I've got enough, we're around so much of it all the time. We don't even know the long-term damage that it could potentially have.
Yeah.
But I just wear the Oura Ring at nighttime. So I just keep it by my bed. There's a charging dock right there. It can go 7 days without it needing to be charged. And I just like it because, sleep is probably one of the most underrated things in our lifetime that we just don't appreciate. And I think for the longest time, given working in coach sports type setting, it's all about how much you're doing. You got to be the first person in, last person out.
Yeah,
sleep when you're dead, even though we tell our athletes completely opposite things, so we're not practicing what we're preaching. It came to a halt where a couple of years ago I just had this really bad sleep for like 8 or 9 months straight, where I wake up at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and then go back to sleep. And this would happen every single day. I'm like, well, I got to get a handle on my sleep. So going back and just trying to figure out what it was that I was doing wrong. For the longest time, I'd always been an afternoon workout person. Like that was me in college. That was me in grad school. That was me my first few jobs working at different universities. And, it would be like, I'd take, my pre-workout concoction before that, it had 200, 300 milligrams of caffeine. And this is, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
Not necessarily knowing that obviously is still going to have half of that caffeine in my system 10 to 12 hours later. And that's going to impact deep sleep and the ability to get good quality sleep, even though I'm able to fall asleep.
Yeah.
Just learning, like just taking a deep dive in sleep. And the ring has just been really helpful in just kind of learning about what's going on when I sleep and what do I need to do the day of to get good quality sleep. It's kind of more of a challenge than anything else. Like I won't make any decisions for myself based on, my readiness score is low, I can't work out today, or my sleep was bad, I can't set foot outside today. It's like, no, that just means I didn't do what I needed to do the day before, and I got to get back in the competition mode to get those scores up.
Right.
And you feel the difference. Like you don't feel tired during the day. Like I know when, obviously back when we had access to weight rooms, it feels like so long ago.
Yeah, I know.
Given we're in quarantine mode, like if I check my ring and I know it's a lift day and my readiness score is up and my, sleep score is up, that means like, not only am I going to have a really good long duration workout, I can try to attack some heavy weights, push it a little more, as opposed to if sleep score was down, I know that I won't be able to hit those heavy weights. But if the readiness score is down, I know that fatigue is going to come a lot earlier in that session. So that kind of just allows me to kind of really go for it when it's perceived to show that my body is ready for it.
Yeah. It's funny. So this, I should know this, but this is maybe going to be like our 12th or 13th episode when this comes out. People are listening are going to look at their phone. They're like, it's the 11th, you idiot. But, it's funny, within the first 12, I've had 2 sleep experts on because kind of, we don't need to get into this, but one of the things why I want to start this podcast is as I got married, as I had kids, and as I started working, I was trying to do it all, and including like be the first one to work, like knock it out, you know what I mean? And then still like before that, I would get up and work out, and eventually like the wheels started to come off because I was just burning myself out. And so I kind of went on this own path of self-discovery. That sounded way more like, I'm up on a mountaintop than I intended it to. But I was like, man, I need to make some changes because I can't keep this up. Like cracks are starting to show. And one of the things I was looking at is like, I keep trying to fit everything in and I'm squeezing out sleep. And on top of that, like I'm not sleeping well. And some of that was the stuff with just having kids. But when I remade sleep a priority, and one of the ways that I went about doing that is I read a book called Sleep. Do you know, are you familiar with Nick Littlehales? He can't.
No.
So he, I mean, he's kind of prominent for a number of reasons, but how I found out about him was, did you ever hear the story about British cycling and like the
Regional gains?
Yes.
Yeah.
So he was the sleep coach
nice. Okay.
for British cycling. So anyways, he has an awesome book. And what I liked about his book was it gives like, it's not so much like the study of sleep. It was like, hey, if you're looking to sleep better, like here's things that you can start to do to try and like improve the quality of your sleep, improve your routine. Like it's kind of like what you're talking about, like working out at 4 or 5, taking 300 milligrams of caffeine, like probably not conducive to you like getting quality sleep or be able to fall asleep at a decent time. Right. So by reading that, I was like, okay, here's some changes I can make. And I mean, no exaggeration, that had a better impact on the quality of my life, let alone my workouts, than anything else. So I'm glad to hear that from your perspective, like sleep is one of the most important things that you and your athletes can be doing. Are you spending time talking to your athletes about the importance of sleep as it pertains to recovery?
Yeah, we've got a sleep consultant, so we will be able to do some more in-depth questionnaires. We also have a really good athlete sleep screening questionnaire that we're going to try to implement with the guys just to identify are there any issues, and also see like are these guys, you know, owls or are they larks? Because then that gives a better idea.
I was going to ask you about that. Okay.
You know how their day should be dictated, how much light they should get at certain times, what they should do when they go home. Now, obviously, we can educate them, we can provide them all the resources. They're going to have to want to do it. You know, you're going to have guys that buy in, you're going to have guys that aren't. You have guys that want to buy an Oura Ring and check it out, and some that don't. You have guys that buy it, that don't wear it. I mean, it's all these different things. But in terms of just the day-to-day communication, I mean, that's one of my tasks outside of nutrition, recovery, and strength is to kind of, you know, try to provide some insights on sleep, because there is a strong correlation between nutrition and sleep and its impact. And, you know, a lot of studies that show if you're deficient in certain micronutrients, it's going to impact sleep quality, sleep latency. If you take certain micronutrients at a certain time of day, it's going to impact sleep latency, sleep quality, which is awesome because it allows us to ask questions to our players and then come up with solutions based on what they reply with. You know, is it a diet-induced thing? Is it a stress-induced thing? Is it a lifestyle thing where they could be just drinking and taking caffeine and smoking, you know, or are they dehydrated? So it allows us to kind of check a bunch of different boxes by asking them a lot of different questions. But yeah, I think sleep is huge. And, you know, it also impacts their ability to recover and to, you know, expend energy. It changes, you know, the fuel source that they end up using throughout the day. So if guys are trying to put on muscle mass or trying to lean out and they're not getting enough sleep, then that's like step one. I mean, they could be doing everything right. And the same thing with anybody else that's the non-athlete. If your nutrition seems to be dialed in, you're eating, you know, really high quality foods, the caloric content is insane, you know, you're working out really hard, but you're still struggling to lose weight. I mean, sleep, breathing, these kind of things, stress management techniques are probably more of the foundational pieces that you need to work on and check out first, and then build everything on top of that. Because you see it all the time. People fail, you know, with lifting programs and training programs and nutrition programs and not get the results they want because, you know, they're not sleeping very much. They have a high stress life or job, or they don't have any outlets for stress. They, you know, they're mouth breathers. They don't, you know, they go, which also plays a role with their ability to sleep. Breathers. Yeah. So, I mean, sleep, like I said, is one of the most underrated things in our lifetime. And, you know, I'm glad that you've had a couple people like experts on to talk about it. And it's definitely something that we don't shy away from when we talk to our players.
Yeah. No, that's great to hear. Yeah. And I'm so fascinated by it. And I'm so fascinated that when I talk, so the first woman we had on, she works with the Rand Corporation and she does a lot of stuff, helping, trying to inform the military, but she's, one of her big agenda items is like helping roll back school start times in America.
Oh yeah.
For adolescent teens. Cause like we're getting them out of bed. And so she's leading that charge. That's actually how I got put in touch with her, but, yeah, it's so interesting to me, but to hear that like as a area of research, it's still so new. Yeah. You know, like the resources just haven't been dedicated to understanding it, and it takes up such a huge, portion of our life. But like to your point, it just touches everything, right? Mm-hmm. So that's crazy. Okay, I know we've been going at this for a while, so I have one last question. So my buddy, who I mentioned, and this is, countless friends, in terms of, kind of where they're at in life, they work a full job, but they're getting to the gym maybe 4 or 5 times a week, but like they're still having trouble like leaning out, mm-hmm. right? So they don't have the demands of an NFL player. But if someone is still looking to get to the gym, like lift, say 4 times a week, and they're trying to lean out, like from a dietary standpoint, like what are the sort of things that they should be trying to do?
I think too broad? In general, it's, identifying what your eating opportunities and what an eating window is during the day. Obviously, since they're not trying to be, a Pro Bowl NFL caliber player, then, eating, 6-7 times a day, where keeping up your metabolism, which was once, I said those things years ago before I continued to research and learn, is not the norm now. Obviously, we're getting more into time restricted feeding, fasting, things of that nature. And, it's not anything that I throw out there for our players, because
I was going to ask you about that. I don't want to keep you longer than
they think about it and they hear about it, and there are ways you could potentially try to do it, whether it's be smart about when you're eating, maximizing the times that you eat. So obviously eating around workouts. If you're trying to lean out, getting a consistent amount of protein, manipulate your carbs around your workouts, which is going to be really important, especially if your friend's not trying to go full on keto or anything like that.
And does that mean manipulate your carbs mean when you do eat carbs, try and do that after a workout?
I would say get the bulk of your carbs before and after your workouts.
Before and after workouts. Okay.
Yeah. Try to, like, if your friend works out in the afternoon, then obviously it's going to be a little bit more difficult, where he could probably hold off at breakfast, maybe get it pre and post workout, and then maybe something later on in the day. So he's only eating, like 3 or 4 times total, but just getting, proper nutrition around those times. Understanding that, again, you don't have to eat 5, 6, 7 times a day to keep your metabolism up. That's not true.
Okay.
Where if you hit your caloric mark, you can do it in an eating window, whether it's this, 8-hour eating window, 12. I eat in a 12-hour window.
Yeah.
Which is fine with me. And that works for me. I eat 4 total times per day on lift days and only 3 times on rest days. Yeah. Now I eat higher carb. And again, this is what works for me. I'm not saying your friend do exactly this, but if it makes sense for him, he can try it out. I go higher carb, low fat, high to moderate protein on the lift days. And then the other days I don't work out at all, or I just do like morning fasted cardio, which I think has been it's a positive thing, like just moderate intensity stuff.
I do that as well, and I feel like I see benefit from that. And to your point, I suppose that could just be very like the way I respond to it. But is there research to back up that fasted cardio would be more beneficial to like fat loss than say someone who is like I can't work out on an empty stomach?
It depends on the case, but I think what the research has shown that it is beneficial. So say, you have a day you want to do fasted cardio, or it's just a day you feel like moving a little bit more. Again, the intensity is going to be moderate. You're only doing it for 20 or 30 minutes. And this could just be walking outside.
Oh, okay.
Honestly, or it could be walking on a treadmill. It could be just doing some bike stuff. Yeah. It could be doing the Stairmaster. Not to where, like, if you can't hold a conversation with somebody if they were next to you, then you're going too fast. And everybody's got a different fat max zone based on heart rate and VO2 max. So it's hard to me just to say that he needs to be in this zone, but those are kind of the basic guidelines. So if he took some essential amino acids and some caffeine before that, that way it's not truly a fasted state, but you actually have some amino acids to help prevent any muscle catabolism, and he can still stay somewhat fasted since it isn't a huge caloric demand that the body would need.
And essentially, now we went over this earlier, but I just want to make sure so the essential amino acids, you're taking an actual essential amino acid supplement, and that's not the BCAAs.
Yes, correct. So they've got pills and they've got powders. Like there's tons out there.
All right, I got to change it up. I've been doing it all wrong.
And again, to the point for your friend is, manipulating that carbohydrate intake around, those workout days. If there's a day where he's not really doing anything, obviously you cut down on the intake. You may go a little bit higher fat, a little higher protein, lower carb
on the
non-workout days. So you're just matching what's going on. The same thing we would tell our players is, look, you got to see what your energy demands are if it's a guy who's trying to lean out. And there's also some really good research I just read that if you had I think it's an overall a 25% caloric decrease in your intake over the course of a week, so whatever it's calculated at, and you did 25 consistently for 7 days a week, as opposed to you did 35% decrement Monday to Friday, and then you went 100% on Saturday and Sunday as like a refeed day, you actually had better losses in fat, better maintenance in muscle mass. So that's where you can kind of get more of a refeed day on those off days and the weekends. So say he works out, Monday to Friday, and then doesn't really do anything, or you can still do fast cardio, but eat a little bit more, not just eating just crap food, but, increasing the caloric intake. So if you want to have, a bunch more carbs, you want some potatoes, you want some pasta, then you could end up doing that for that 100% day, which still would equate to 25% caloric loss for the entire week. So they did that for 7 weeks, and then they looked at it again. So that's where, you don't want to just stay in this caloric decrement all the time, because what happens is, you're going to alter your muscle glycogen enzymes. You're going to alter your hormone, those satiety hormones like ghrelin and leptin and all that. And you want to stimulate some of that. You don't want to just put it at bay by eating at this caloric level, which is much lower than baseline all the time. That's why having those refeed days built in are beneficial.
Okay. So I'm going to say this back to you. You tell me if I understood it right.
Okay.
So it's more beneficial if you are going to do like some sort of like a deficit, right, over the course of a week, to have at least one day, like let's call it Sunday, where you're not working out, you're not doing anything, where you actually don't worry about eating at a deficit. It's actually better to just like eat, not go crazy or go crazy.
At 100% intake. So not overdo it where it's like, biscuits and gravy and pancakes and syrup, and then you had a whole pizza, and then you had burgers and fries, and you're looking at 5,000 calories for the day is over. No, you want to eat to 100%. So just match what you're expending.
So So at the risk of sounding like I'm willing to try any fat out there, did you read Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Body that came out?
Yeah.
This kind of falls in line with at least one of the things he was talking about, right?
Yeah.
But it sounds like there's research, maybe there was at that time, but research kind of supports this idea of like having at least one day a week where you're eating at 100%, no deficit, is actually more beneficial than staying at a deficit every single day, just kind of in perpetuity.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's exactly what it is. And I think for a lot of people, it's just understanding that most people eat a lot more than what they're actually thinking. So tracking is really important. So there's nothing wrong with weighing your food and just kind of getting an idea. Like, not everybody has to do it, but if you're not sure and you feel that, you want to do it right and you feel confident in it, there's like, sometimes I'll weigh protein portions. So I've got a food scale. So I know that on those high fat, higher protein days, I'll have at least 8 to 10 ounces of meat at a mealtime. And on my high carb days where I cut down the protein, I'll have, 4 to 6, because I'm smashing so many more other carbs. I want to make sure that I'm not just staying high on everything, because then the caloric intake just goes through the window, and I'm not necessarily matching the goals that I'm trying to meet. And
interesting.
And I think there's nothing wrong with eating like within a certain window. So some people say, well, you don't want to eat too late, or, it's okay to eat later on. There's a lot of different schools of thoughts. So my last meal will probably be after we stop talking.
Yeah.
I really don't do anything crazy, because I've already had 2 monster meals, and I already lifted earlier this morning with my band push-up, whatever workout at home.
Yeah.
So I try to get most of my calories the early part of the day, not only because it's when I work out, but because that's what the research shows, is you're probably better off with maintaining weight and reaching body weight goals, getting the bulk of your calories earlier on in the day, instead of trying to get it later on in the day, obviously, because that also starts playing a role with, influencing insulin, messing with sleep, especially if you eat really late, your body's trying to digest it all. That increases, there's some caloric expenditure that increases body temperature. It starts throwing things out of whack, makes it a lot more difficult to sleep. And we know that we need adequate and proper sleep to be able to, function, build that muscle, get that growth hormone pulsing, repair all the damaged tissues and cells, and then be able to stay lean or get lean.
Yeah.
And then another thing is just being comfortable with being hungry. So this is true for anybody that's trying to lean out. Like, the second somebody's stomach grumbles, even if they're whether they're trying to lose weight or not, like the first instinct is to grab food. It's because that's how we are as a society. Food is within arm's reach anywhere you go. Hopefully for everybody, even now around the world, given that we're quarantined, it still holds true. And now this is big during this time. We know that, energy expenditure is going to be decreased because people aren't going out and about. I mean, you're sitting at home and you're not working out the entire day. You're not going up and down the stairs 20 times. You're not doing what you normally do and getting your 10,000 steps in, unless you really are. So, the non-exercise activity thermogenesis goes down. You're not going to be able to work out as much or consistently or do as much as you normally would if, you had access to a full gym. So I know for me, that's decreased too. So not only has your physical activity caloric expenditure decreased, your overall just non-exercise activity caloric expenditure decreases. So then something has to change there too.
Yeah.
That was a whole different topic, but I was talking about people just need to be comfortable with being hungry. And when I talk to athletes and people that are trying to lean out or lose weight, they say, well, what if I'm hungry? I'm like, that's exactly where you want to be. That's the body saying, all right, now I'm trying to get into a little bit of a fasted state. We're doing something here. It's okay to do that. Obviously, you don't want to do it for 24, 48 hours unless you're really trying to do a challenge.
Right.
But being comfortable with being hungry is a good thing. That's how you know that you're getting to that stage where, all right, there's stuff going on in the body. It's asking for food. Normally what you do is you appease it by eating something, but that's not what you want to do or what you want to try to do. That's why you might want to eat less overall throughout the day in certain windows and not just eat to where you start feeling full. So when you're eating, people that are trying to lose weight, start with your proteins and your higher fiber foods like your vegetables, and then go to your fruit, and then go to your carbohydrates. And then maybe even just getting in a really good parasympathetic state before eating, because people are just sometimes just really hopped up and they're like, I gotta eat. The body's not in a space where it can really facilitate good digestion and break down all the food it needs to. So just kind of breathing, just sitting maybe for like 10 or 30 seconds, just feeling calm, breathing normally through the nose, into the nose, out through the nose, and then attacking your food instead of just going straight for it.
Yeah. That's something that I only recently kind of became. I mean, I feel like everyone now has at least heard the term microbiome, but I was just reading a book called Gut. I don't know if you're aware of that one.
I've heard of it. Yeah.
Julia Enders. I think she's actually German. I was trying to get her on the show and then I realized we speak a different language. So we're trying to work through that. But and what struck me is like, 'cause I have young kids, and part of that book was like, look, like this like tradition of forcing your kids to eat and like creating like this kind of tension and anxiety around food can actually be like harmful to their digestion. And so that kind of falls in line with what you're saying, like getting this parasympathetic state. And so to do that's kind of, it stopped me if I oversimplify this, but this idea of like fight or flight, right? If you're like constantly in this like stressed induced state, it's worthwhile to like take a moment, you're saying, to like calm down, try and get yourself to relax. And then that could actually help improve like the digestion and kind of like is it also true like for your body's ability to like absorb the nutrients and like the dietary
so to speak.
benefit
So
from the food?
If you're able to, chew it properly down to, I think it's like 25 to 35 chews per swallow. And most people don't do that. It's like 1, 2, 3 swallow. Oh, but yeah. And it's funny the way that we've kind of transitioned over the years to just inhale our food. And I was guilty of that. I'm still guilty of it. Trying to be more mindful of it.
25 to 30 chews per swallow? Or no, yes. 25 to 30. That might be the biggest takeaway from this whole, I need to change the way
and it's tough because even when I try to do that, it's not pleasurable. It's more pleasurable to just take a couple chews and then swallow your food. But when you chew it all the way down, then it's like, oh, this is just mush. So like you said, it's getting in that good parasympathetic state. The body is not stimulated. You don't have, heart rate's not elevated. Cortisol's not flowing. That allows for digestion to flow naturally. You have appropriate GI transit time to where the stomach's going to take care of just getting everything in that acidic environment. And again, acidic, there's a role for the body having certain acidic environments. I mean, it's not all about chugging all these alkaline foods and drinking that high pH water because it doesn't do anything. That's another topic for another day.
We just save people some money.
But yeah, I mean, and being able to control your blood glucose by eating, the higher protein, higher fiber vegetables, and then go into everything else. I mean, that's another big point for people that are trying to, lose weight or lean out is things that can help control blood glucose levels. And not only is it just the way you act, exercising, how much sleep you get, but, things like taking cold showers first thing in the morning, being in a very parasympathetic state when you eating the proper foods in a certain way. And that can help. And a lot of these small different tactics can add up over time. If you think about it, maybe it's like 5 calories here, 10 calories here, whatever it is.
Right. No, and so I'm so glad you said that, because so one of my big gripes is people try, and I understand, and I so sympathize with why they do it, because they're looking for some sort of diet that works for them, that helps hopefully get them to whatever their goal weight is, or their goal, lean body mass or physique. But I feel like a lot of people, they give up on it too early, right? Because they don't see the results out the gate. And what I feel like you just said is, it's about like small, maybe incremental. I mean, we just talked about incremental gains, but small wins over time, right, can get you there. And it could be a combination of multiple factors that get you a small incremental gain, right? They could ultimately move you to your goal.
That's so true. And again, everybody wants the quick fix. It's just how we're built as humans in modern day society, because we have access to any and everything under the sun. Even now, everybody's quarantined, but you can still work. You have meetings through Zoom. You can order food and groceries online. And, luckily all the postal delivery services are still available. So you can still get everything to you, even though we're not necessarily supposed to be going out.
Yeah.
But the same way that weight gain happens slowly over time, it's not just, 2 weeks happen and 30 pounds, 40 pounds. It's something that happened over the course of time. Right. There's a lot of confounding factors, whether it's the food you eat, the lack of inactivity, or lack of activity, stress, poor sleep, hormones are out of whack. Again, when you're trying to reach a task like losing weight, the goal isn't to lose weight. The goal is to do these small steps every single day over the course of a week, over the course of a month, over the course of a few months. So over time, you're going to see the progress and you're going to develop these habits, because I just either read something or saw something. I don't know if it's been published or studied, but it takes 66 days to ingrain a habit. I don't know if it's to break a habit, but to ingrain a habit. That's a long amount of time. So if you're one of those people who isn't consistently working out, you probably want to do it for the course of 2 months or so, 66 days, which isn't a ton amount of time in the grand scheme of things. But when you hear 66, it's like, oh man, that seems like a lot. I have to do a diet for 66 days. It's like, well, no, you just have to be more mindful and be smart about what you're eating. When you sit down to eat, we obviously overestimate our portion sizes. I do it too. So eat slower, eat till you're about 80% full. It's a great Japanese proverb. I think it's called harahachi bun mi. Eat till you're 80% full, because it takes time for food to get digested, for the hormone sensation to get kicked up back to your brain to say, hey, I'm full. So if you eat really fast, you're just going to consume more calories by the time that signal gets sent to your stomach. So when you're eating consistently, you're eating slowly, you're mindful about the food that you're eating, the order that you're eating it, you're not going super fast, then you're going to be able to slow down that process and not eat as much. And then if you don't eat till you're full, because we all feel like if food's on our plate, we have to stuff ourselves. So it just means taking smaller portions to begin with. But instead of just eating till we feel like we're super satiated and then feeling sick, eat till you're 80% full. And then the rest of the time, the rest of the digestion is going to happen. And that signal is going to get sent to your brain to say, you're right. I stopped at the right time. That was the perfect amount of food. Yeah. I say that a lot when I go out to eat, or when I'm with friends or cooking something, put, what I think is the right amount of food on the plate, eat it. And I feel like I hit the 80% mark, and then the fullness then comes, and I'm like, shit, that was a perfect amount of food.
Right. Yeah. I blow right past that 80%. And I also convinced myself, I'm like, well, you worked out really hard today. So is there any truth to you can outwork a bad diet?
To an extent, but I think it just depends on. Yeah.
Because there's no extremes. This is the example I use, Michael Phelps. Like the Olympic swimming, like everyone talks about how many calories he ingested, but he was also working out.
It was 7 hours a day. He was burning 10,000 calories. I mean, you can't just eat brown rice and potatoes and banana. Like, you got to have some fun stuff in there too, just to hit the caloric amount. Because otherwise, the amount of fiber and the fullness he would feel from doing that, he wouldn't be able to hit that, and then he'd just be dropping weight. Performance would go out the window. He wouldn't be the most decorated gold medal Olympian in the history of world sport.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah, ever. Yeah. Okay. That's good to know. And then, all right, last one, because I want to ask you about veganism. I want to ask you about all this stuff. Do you actually, well, and you don't even need to go into it, but do you have any athletes that hold to a vegan diet? I know there's some pretty prominent NFL players who are vegan.
There's some that, kind of test it out, try it out just because they'd seen the documentary, or, they've heard a lot more about plant-based diet, even though I don't know if the name plant-based and vegan are exactly synonymous, because some governing bodies do say it is, but then some don't. So again, it's not something I outright tell guys they need to do. And the reason is, when you look at what the demands are for an NFL football player, what are the macronutrients that are needed for them to be healthy, but to also function at a high level. And a lot of those products are going to come from meat products and animal products. And that's just the benefit you get. Now, is there a way to supplement? Because I've worked with some in the past that say, I want to go vegan. These are the foods that I'm planning on eating. These are the foods I'm not eating, just in terms of what they were doing on the non-animal, non-meat side. And I'm like, all right, well, based on what you tell me, what you've cut out, these are the, micronutrients that you're not going to be getting in, whether it's like omega-3, creatine, collagen, whey protein, calcium, because I know, like, if they already say they're not going to get it from the plant alternative, then they have to supplement. So what we ended up putting together was just this massive bag with all these options for them to take to meet the needs of the deficiency. And it was just insane of what, it's just so much. Really? Now, it doesn't mean that people can't be successful. There's a lot of people that can be successful. And I think you see a lot of that more maybe like individual type athletes or non-team sports, where you have players that are 300 plus pounds or play at the level and intensity, because sometimes it's just hard to meet those energy demands. I know a lot of NBA players have gone vegan over the past year or two. And then, you have these news snippets or in interviews with them saying that they just couldn't meet their energy needs and they got bored of it. So they had to switch back. And the main thing is, like, there's nothing wrong with people eating more plant-based foods, like fruits and vegetables, good quality carbohydrates, complex carbohydrates. I mean, that's obviously exactly what the guys need to be doing. But if you source high quality meats and you're not just eating like fried food all the time, there's nothing that says that any player can't be healthy. So the ones that go from eating their mixed animal omnivorous diet to plant-based, like, one, they were already doing the omnivorous diet wrong. Like, it's atrocious when you hear what they're eating. It's high processed stuff, a lot of sugar, a lot of candy, a lot of fried foods, things that nobody would really recommend to them to begin with. So they go from this horrible spectrum to complete opposite, where they're eating like this varied diet of a lot of fruits and vegetables and, a lot more plant-based type options, non-meat options. And it's like, well, that's what you should have been doing anyway, but include back, things like salmon, include back like grass-fed beef and steak and really great chicken and free-range eggs, stuff like that they could afford.
Yeah. No, then I feel like, and again, in no way am I a nutritionist, but it seems like if you were to just start making just good common sense decisions, that would be such a great place to start, right? Like, to your point, it's like, eat vegetables, the meat that you eat, make sure it's high quality, and try and cut out processed junk. Like, for everyone listening, is that probably like a great place to start?
Because you can do plant-based horribly too. Like, if I ate bagels and cereal and all that, you could call yourself vegan and plant-based. Fries. I'm like, there's a right way and a wrong way to do both. And I've said this before, and people might not agree with me just because it's the hot topic of, all these different diets that come out, whether they've been done for long times or not, they're fads and they're lifestyles. So right now, veganism is a fad and it's a lifestyle because it's the hot topic. Last year it was keto. Before that, it's, like Whole30. Before that, it's paleo, and then it's Zone, and it's Atkins. They're all fads and they're all lifestyles. People are going to stick around and do it because they believe in it, but it's going to come and go. The next thing that comes out, there's going to be another thing next year, and there's going to be another thing the year after that. But the tried and true things that players need are just going to be the basics. Basic sports nutrition concepts. Same thing goes for, your recreational athlete, your friends, yourself, myself, just,
Yeah.
The basics will always get you there, and then you got to build. You got to look at your situation, because there's no one singular diet that can meet the needs of everybody, and that's true. Not one singular one. Even though you have the zealots on both sides that try to preach their agenda, which I think is hilarious. I mean, you just look at people historically, their genetic backgrounds, their anthropological status, like what their ancestors ate, and that's what they're more predominantly going to be able to do. They're going to, and that's going to dictate because that's how their genetics are. And it's hard if you look at generations and generations to change that. So whatever, European ancestors ate, whatever African ancestors ate, whatever, Asian ancestors ate, that's what's going to probably be more in line with what your DNA can handle and your genetics can handle more. So, I mean, they have all these genetic tests out there, but nothing is really valid and reliable, because, people have taken the same genetic background, same person has taken multiples, and you get different results for all of them. So it's hard to just say like, all right, now we need to go 100% in on the ancestry and the genetics type stuff in terms of just lifestyle, nutrition, and training.
Yeah. Now, that's probably a great place to end too. But I tend to believe, like, and it sounds like with nutrition, like most things in life, it's like just try and make good common sense choices and stick to them over time. Is that fair? Or am I hope I'm not putting words in your mouth.
Understanding, their health status too. Like, people who have never done a blood draw and don't know what their markers are. If you're deficient in something, if you have excessive amount of something, I think that's also another really good place to start is.
Okay. See, and I've never done that. And I'm quite frankly, like, I could probably look it up, but I'm a little confused. Like, where do you even go to get something like that done?
Because I went to your doctor. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry.
Again, every state's different. Some states you can order a kit online, like a SpectraCell or some kind of Quest Diagnostics testing, and you can go to a local like phlebotomist. You don't have to go to your primary care physician to do it. New Jersey's different. You're not allowed to do that, so you have to go see your doctor. So when we do the draws for all our players, it's under physician, supervision and all that. Everything gets signed off. But I think it's huge. It's something that I've tried to take a really deep dive in, since I'm in charge of kind of implementing some of our I guess policies and procedures based on what the players' biomarkers are. Because I think it's really insightful just to kind of learn this information. And if you don't know if someone's deficient in certain micronutrients, like I was talking about before, this is what we look at with their biomarkers. And one of the main ways to optimize health status is to correct deficiencies. I mean, everybody wants the silver bullet of what should I be taking, what diet should I be doing. Like, one is identify where you're deficient. Like, if you're trying to do this one diet out of left field, which is super deficient, you're already deficient in a lot of things. Like, you've got low vitamin D, you've got a horrible omega-6 to 3 ratio, you've got a low omega-3 index percent in the body. Your albumin's low. It's like you have elevated creatine kinase levels. Your testosterone's out of whack. Your cortisol measured throughout the day is just excessively high. I mean, those are the places to really start first, and then implement your diet based on what's going on with your body, not based on what some Instagram, Twitter, whoever told you to do, because they ended up, being really successful and losing a bunch of weight. Well, they're so different than you. They don't have the same lifestyle, same problems, same schedule. Even myself, when I was in grad school at K-State and I was working with the K-State men's basketball team, I was super lean. I was doing a lot of lifting, a lot of like West Side type methodology mixed in with some like high intensity workouts. So like combining CrossFit and some weightlifting. And I was super lean. Like on the DEXA, I was 10 or 11%. And even for that overestimated. So I was probably in the teens and in the low digits. And I was eating a certain way. I had a certain schedule, and I know exactly what I did. And as I progressed in my career, obviously things changed. Like, my schedule's different. I'm not getting as much sleep. My access to gym equipment and to be able to do the exact same diet changed. So I try to implement the same thing because I wasn't as lean as time progressed. So even myself doing with the same genetics, trying to do the same program I've done before, I was never able to reach those levels. I was eating almost the exact same thing, trying to do the exact same type of workouts to the best of my ability. So that just meant that I got to assess my situation and identify, what do I need to change based on what's going on with my life? What has changed now from then? And what do I need to do? So completely was able to overhaul that, with different methodologies, implementing different things that I've learned and researched. And now obviously fortunate enough to be back in, the single digits and be able to maintain that. And that's the goal, using, things that I've learned, what the research says out there, common sense, but it's what works for me. And even I had to change that. So if I told somebody to do what I did in grad school or what I'm doing right now, odds are they're probably not going to be able to see the exact same results because they're different.
Yeah. No, and that's such a good point. Well, dude, this has been awesome, man. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. And this is really interesting. And quite frankly, like in the future, if you'd be down to come back, I'll keep peppering your questions, man. This is great.
Happy to help.
Yeah. So, hey, so if people want to either follow what you're doing or get in touch with you in some way, where's the best place?
I'm pretty active on Twitter and LinkedIn. So LinkedIn, I guess you can just type in my first and last name. Hopefully, pretty easy to find me. Twitter handle is Pratik X Patel, PRATIK X PATEL. Instagram's the same handle. I'm trying to change my Instagram to where it's more educational because I think there's still a lot that can be shared out there, not only just in the nutrition realm, but stuff that I've learned working in sport, this whole, leadership role, trying to give back to the next generation of practitioners and coaches that are coming up, just try to share experiences that I've learned because obviously everybody's situation is different.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. No, and so I'll make sure to link to it. I think that's so important. And, that's kind of the foundation of this podcast is I feel like a lot of the things that can make for a great athlete, likewise can make for a great person. So, while the demands are different of an NFL player, I think to your point, a lot of the things that you're trying to educate them on, can help someone in their day job be a better parent. I mean, what's more important than that? You know what I mean? So, I love it, man. Thank you. I'm going to link to all of that and I will certainly be following along. And this has been a huge help.
No, I'm glad. Thanks for having me.